You see, the reason why I'm asking you to come forward is that those who join, the elite cadres of the government, must be always in front of everything. They must look forward, you know. Therefore, my request to you would be to get close so that I can see you and interact with you. Fine, that's better. Now, as I said, you have proved your merit. Your merit has been tested. What is left is now to decide your suitability. That is an important question. You have, by passing the exams, earned the right to be interviewed. This is your hak, your right to be interviewed. Therefore, you should be confident that it is nobody's favor. Nobody is doing a favor by calling you for the interview. You have earned it. You have a right. And like every other right, you must know how to exercise that right. Okay? My job is to tell you, help you to exercise that particular right. Okay? Now, you should also clearly understand what you are really trying for. I'm sure you have already gone through all the texts, but let me just mention that you are trying for entry into the elite cadres of the civil service under the central government. The word civil service is not understood in India very well, because the Hindi translation of these two words, bureaucracy, is misleading. I checked Bhargava's dictionary, I found there are two words. One is Naukar Shahi. This is a contradiction in terms, because a Naukar, by definition, cannot rule. Second meaning is Adhikari Tantra, which again is a bit of a misleading idea, because you cannot have democracy and Adhikari Tantra together. Ganatantra and Adhikari Tantra cannot go together. So this relationship is not very clear to the Indian mind. And Indian mind, thanks to the influence of the English language, is generally confused. This is expressed in the use of the word Babu, as you see in this Indian media. Let me just tell you, the word Babu is a Bengali word. It is an approximate translation of the word Mr. into Bengali that the British attempted and widely used in Eastern India. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was Rajan Babu. Biju Patnaik was Biju Babu. The word Babu is a honorific term used by the British in their official communication with the gentry, with the zamindars, with the rajas and others. But Indian media here in Delhi has given a distorted meaning of the term, which refers to lowly employees of the government. This is all wrong. What I'm trying to say is that you should have a clear understanding of the role of the higher civil service cadres in the central government. There are 4 aspects I'd like to highlight. You must have read it. For your reference, you may go through the OECD definition of senior civil service, SCS. You have gone through it, have you? These are the cadres recruited through an open competitive examination. Why competitive examination? Before 1854, jobs in the government were on patronage basis. If you look at the hierarchy of Mughal period, you will find that all the top posts were held by persons of Iranian origin in the field as well as the central government. Look at this tomb of Safdarjung. So people like him were recruited on the basis of parentage, family connections, etc. The competitive examination was introduced, of course, long back in China, but when it was adopted in India for two reasons. One, to provide legitimacy. To provide legitimacy to the functioning of the government. Number one. Number two, it also entails trust, the doctrine of public trust. Okay? That is, since the people who have been recruited on the basis of merit, they should have in mind the trust reposed in them by the people. Third point, which is very important, is that these cadres are meant to dispense with, to deal with wide variety of functions. Number one is enforcement of law. Now, this reminds me an interesting point made by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose when he delivered his address, presidential address in 1938 at Haripura Congress. He said, on a quote, "In every country, ministers come and go, but the steel frame of the permanent services remains. It is the permanent services who really rule in every country." There are two words here. One is permanent services, means the cadres that you are trying to join, where young men and women are recruited at an early age. They go through the motion of promotions and all, and eventually they reach the highest positions in the government. And when you reach these positions, you have got to remember that your job is not really routine administrative work. Yes, but primarily certain qualities will be required. These qualities are summed up in one English word: statesmanship. Why? Because you'll be dealing with, number one, making of policies. Policies have multi-dimensional aspects. An agricultural policy will have implications for irrigation policy. Irrigation will have impact or relations with power development, power with natural resources, and a choice about whether you should go for renewable or for fossil fuel based policy making. Second, policy implementation. Third, participation in the process of making laws. Fourth, ensuring the laws are implemented. Next, evaluation of programs. How is the outcome relatable to the policy objects? And finally, decide about taxation policy. What taxes are to be raised? How the taxes are to be collected? Now, all these boil down to one sentence, that primary job of the civil service is enforcement of laws, policies, programs, and projects. Please remember, policy has the force of law. Once a policy is laid in the table of the House, it acquires legal sanctity. Every scheme that is implemented is funded from the government, and the taxes are raised by laws. So every year you find finance bills are discussed and adopted. So all these require a certain competence. What is that? Now, why Netaji mentioned about the word rule? Rule the country. Why? Because you exercise powers over other citizens. This is the primary difference between working in a private sector, company like Vodafone or whatever, and working in the government. You exercise powers over other citizens in two ways. One, restraining the people from not doing something illegal. You can't cross the road when there is red light. Restraining them and then compelling them. If you don't pay taxes, if you don't, then I'll put you behind bar. Aapko andar kar denge. Therefore, this means that civil service is really not for social service. I'm sorry that many candidates, when they appear for mock interview, they say, sir, I would like to devote my life to the suffering humanity of our country. I would like to serve the society and repay the debt that I owe to the society. It is all neither here nor there. Pardon me to say, after having decades of experience in government, it's neither here nor there. If you are so oriented to social service, I suggest you rather join Ramakrishna Mission or Bharat Sevasram Sangh or any other NGO. That is much better. Here, you have to rule, administer. Rasta dikhana aapka kaam hai. So, this requires a certain amount of character. Now, this character has been summed up by a very great British ICS officer who served in India, that you are basically an instrument of law, because powers conferred on you, please note it seriously, powers conferred on you are exercisable by you only, and by your own judgment, by your own assessment of the situation. It is your duty. If you act at the behest of somebody, then you are betraying the trust reposed on you. And second, you are also demeaning your position. So this is what is called, in summary, in brief language, you are the dispenser of administrative justice. Okay? Now, administrative justice is more difficult to provide, extend, than the formal judicial pronouncements. Because if you are sitting as a judge, you have the benefit of hearing both the lawyers, take down notes, go home, and if you do not if you don't complete the exercise, you might say, I am otherwise busy. Please fix so-and-so date for order. So you are really not under that kind of a pressure. But when you deliver administrative justice, you have to be always at the beck and call of the authorities. And finally, your order must be speaking. The decision that you take should be proper, just, fair, transparent, and not only that, it should be seen outside your office as just, proper, and appropriate, following the due procedure. Okay? Now, therefore, what I'm trying to say is that this requires a certain character. So, you will be tested primarily on this score, whether this young man, young lady, is capable of meeting the requirements of the jobs. In every decision that you take, you have to think of the concept of justice. What does justice mean? You all read John Rawls. Well, it means that you have to balance this side as well as that side and take a view. Sorry. Now this requires application of mind, alertness of mind, and a mind freed from prejudice, bias, outside influence, etc. And that requires a certain amount of integrity. This is what is called integrity of character. intellectual integrity is included in that. Means when you take evidence, you should not ignore certain facts. I give you two examples. Just hypothetical case. You have these cow vigilant problems. That you are suppose a magistrate. Okay. Now, you have to exactly take action as per law and taking into account the facts. Therefore, what is necessary is appreciation of facts, appreciation of law, rules and policy, and then apply your mind, administrative mind, founded on the principle of justice. So, board will try to see whether you possess these qualities of judgment in good measure. That is the primary task before the board. Now, what kind of people constitute the board? The chairman of UPSC, Mr. Professor David Simle, he is from Shillong. If he happens to be sitting in your board, he might ask you about Northeast. Therefore, it is perhaps advisable for you to know some basic facts about the region. There will be 4 or 5 members. All of them are approaching their age of retirement. Serving officers particularly must have about a year or 2 left to say goodbye. Others are retired. There will be experts. By and large, people of this age group tend to be conservative. They are not revolutionaries. They are not for radical changes. To put it bluntly, they will be for the status quo. They are for the system. Okay? So therefore, they would expect a reasoned response rather to your questions. And the whole purpose of the interview, what is it? It is a purpose-driven formal conversation. You have earned the right to be interviewed. It is a public duty that the members of the board will be discharging. Because there is a sacred duty of selecting the best people. And your object is to prove that you are the suitable boy. You are the most competent person. And their public duty is to select without any prejudice, without any presupposition or whatever. They have their duty, their public duty is to select the best persons for the job. Now that is what interview is all about. Now, just think of a possibility. On that particular day, you get up in the morning, what should you do? You will be tense. But don't forget to read the newspaper of that particular day. At least look at the headlines. Second, when you are going to Dholpur house, you should know what is this blessed Dholpur house is. Why is it Dholpur house? Why? Where is Dholpur? Which part of this country? Like that. And suppose this question is asked, they might ask you, could you tell us what is this Hyderabad house about? And then it might lead to a discussion about integration of Indian states and the role of Sardar Patel. So the conversation may flow from one subject to another. The whole purpose is that you should take part in the conversation. You see? Now, your participation in the conversation must be constructive and positive. And please remember that the board will be interested to talk to you. They will be interested to know you. Therefore, you must also present yourself, in a proper manner. If you are wearing a suit, a few things you must remember. Number one, you should try to wear a business suit that I am wearing for the present. This is grey, light grey or dark grey. Your shirt must be white. And the tie, if you're comfortable, it should be either a striped or spotted. Just look at Channel News Asia, Singapore, and see how the Chinese dress, how the Japanese dress, how the Koreans dress, and how we dress. That channel also will tell you how to speak English. The precise and to the point. Your socks should match your suit's color. No white socks, no sports shoes, no jeans. You should wear a formal pair of shoes, either Oxford or Vogue, and when you enter not in a hurried manner, don't rush. You move in a measured way, wish the board members, and they will ask you to sit down. If there's a lady in the board, good morning ma'am, or good afternoon, whatever, look at them and relax and sit down. So up to this I have spoken. Now if you have any question on what I mentioned, I'll be happy to respond. Any question? Tell me.
Conversation can go in any direction.
Yes.
It's not just that at that point of time we can recall everything. So if we feel that we are not remembering or we are not able to answer, then
Okay. You see, no human being in this world can master all facts at a point of time. It is not possible. Even Aristotle would have failed. Therefore, look at it this way. A subject is raised not as a matter of cross-examination. You are not in the witness box. Okay? This is only to facilitate a conversation. If you don't know, then you might as well say, frankly, sir, I am not aware of this problem. So they would switch over to another subject. Okay? And whatever you know, you should mention, just to keep the flow of conversation going. That's the idea, The idea is that you must cooperate. You see? Just as they are willing to talk to you. Why? Because the board would like to see from the conversation some of your traits, your character. It is not difficult. Take for instance, if you don't know, if I say, sir, I don't know, they will appreciate that he is a person who is sure of himself. But if you try to guess and give a wrong answer without knowing, you might invite trouble. Trouble in the sense that it switch over to some other subject. Okay? Now, a few things like critical awareness about what's happening in and around. Because, after all, a discussion is open-ended. There is no such thing that prepared kind of questionnaire or so, nothing of the sort. So it is a free kind of a environment, but it is a formal conversation. Okay? Any other question?
So
No?
what you said was that it was relatively about fact that I don't know. But if there is my opinion is then and I'm not very much aware of that subject, then what should be done?
You should say that my tentative view on the subject is this. You can't plead ignorance about a matter of importance. Whatever you know, you should say. And once you start making a point, you should stop on your own. Don't move on and expect the board to intervene and ask you to stop. Any question on this? Any? No? Okay. Now, there are a few facts of life which one must note. Let me go to your DAF. Okay? Is that okay? Now, if you look at your DAF, begin from the beginning. The photograph on your DAF will be the first thing that the people will note. It's a human psychology. You look at the photograph. Who is the person? Before you come, this will be placed on the table. Look at your photograph, and the demeanor is evident from the face. So suppose you wore a T-shirt at that point of time, and it is written. What is written here? Always on your always ahead. They might ask you, how do you feel? Always ahead. What's the secret of your confidence? What will you say? Tell me.
Present myself in a manner that will improve everyone. That's why I will be ahead of everyone.
You might as well say, sir, I work hard and I feel that I'm always ahead. Okay? So, if you instead, if suppose it is found that the gentleman's T-shirt sports a kind of a logo, I love America, I love New York. So the board member may ask, Mr. So-and-so, what makes you feel so attracted to the United States? I mean, why? Then you have to give some answer. One is that, sir, I really didn't care about this. I was rushing to the studio to get myself photographed, and it's just an accident. That is one. But if you really have such sentiments about America, which many Indians have, therefore you should tell. And the discussion may be about HIV visas. It may lead to a discussion about HIV visa, Donald Trump's policy of restricting entry of Indians, and that kind of thing. So, it is an open-ended discussion, okay? Then your date of birth, etc., etc. Right? Now, here, if you come from a historic place, you ought to know about the history of the place. Take, for instance, the DAF that I have is from a candidate from Manipur. I'm familiar with Manipur. So, city is Imphal West. The Imphal has a place in the history of the Second World War. So I might ask that candidate, gentlemen, you are from Imphal? Why is Imphal so famous in the history? Therefore, he must know the Burma campaign in Second World War, and the fact that the British historians today had taken a view that the toughest battle that the Brits had ever fought in their history was at Imphal, the Battle of Imphal. Tougher than Waterloo that Wellington fought and won against Napoleon. Why? There's some background of Azad Hind Fauj, the Japanese, war cemetery in Imphal. What are the places worth seeing? Have you visited war cemetery? I remember a friend of mine, a very successful IAS officer, he faced a question. He comes from a city where there was a museum. So he was asked about the museum. And this question, why is museum set up? He said, sir, to preserve the riches and the achievements of the past for the benefit of the future generations. Second question, did you visit the museum? No, sir. Then he added, but sir, I make sure when I get back home, I will visit the museum. That pleased the board. So, you should know the place where you were born and its significance. That's very important. Second, you see the mother's family. Suppose your mother's family comes from a place of importance. A Bihar candidate I know, whose mother's family hailed from Buxar. So he was asked about Buxar, the Battle of Buxar. He said, yes, a battle was fought. But what is the significance of that battle in India's history? He said, I don't know, sir. That will be a problem. You should know that Battle of Buxar led to consolidation of British power in Bengal. The East India Company got the Diwali, the first example in human history of privatization of government. It never happened anywhere in the world. It was the beginning. And therefore, these details are important. Idea is to connect you to your environment, okay? Then, examinations, various examinations and that you have passed, education qualifications. Here, one must know the abbreviations. If you are a product of DAV college, you must know who was Swami Dayanand. If you had gone to a St. Peter's school, who was St. Peter? They might ask. And what's the difference between Catholic faith and the Protestant faith? The subjects that you studied will be also seen, the marks that you have scored, but essentially they would like to see consistency in your performance. If there is a gap, suppose some years, you should be able to explain why I could not avail the examination at that particular year or whatever. Now comes your previous work experience, if any. You should be able to give satisfactory account of that. If you are employed in a private sector organization, like say Infosys or TCS, they might ask you about the capital structure of TCS and how is TCS rated, how is working condition in a private company and in the government different. How do you view your role in the private sector and in the government being different? So these are the questions which might follow, and you ought to know, say, the present standing of the company in the share market. If there is any problem, just as Reliance Communication got into serious problem, if you happen to be working from the Reliance, they might ask you about these details. Okay, now very important aspect is the particulars at the university, state and national level, prizes, medals, distinctions that you have won. Here, there are a few tricky things. If you claim that you have played state level cricket tournament, etc., then you ought to have some knowledge about present day cricket and also some rules of the game. Chances are there might be a member of the board who himself had played cricket, knew a bit of cricket, so he might ask you, what do you mean by dead ball, etc. What is silly midon? Where exactly is that? A few things about cricket and also the cricket management of this country, the role of the Supreme Court, the match fixing, the professionalization of the game, whether this has been of help or a hindrance to the growth of sports. And the larger question, why is India not doing so well? Not in cricket, but in other games, in team games particularly. If you had worked for an NGO, you ought to know about the actual role of that particular NGO and the work that you did, and in what way that work had helped you to build up your, what you call, mental makeup or capability. Okay? So this should be carefully gone into. Organization of health camps. your participation in the health camps might lead to one or two issues like the incidence of anemia among the Indian women. Why? When you say health, means you have some interest in the health sector. You get my point? That I have been involved in organizing health camps, which means you have some interest about public health issues, social health issues, mental health issues, like that. You see, the whole purpose is that the board will test your capacity to be a generalist. Your potential to be a generalist is what will be tested. Because public service, public policy making, public administration are primarily done on the basis of assessment of multi-dimensional aspects of a particular decision. You get my point? I'm not particularly happy with this expression, domain knowledge. It means nothing to me. Why? Because take the case of a hydro electricity project in Northeast. A domain knowledge acquired by a person to build a hydel project is not enough to take a decision about whether we should go for a hydel project in an eco-sensitive area, and which might cause damage to people living in the downstream, which might lead to deforestation. You see? Inundation of vast areas, displacement of villagers. And ultimately, think of it, if we're producing surplus power, which will be evacuated to other parts of the country, why make the people of that area suffer for it? And what do you get in return? Some royalty, some extra central funding. So if you look at the issues involved in Subarn Siri Hydel project, which is a big issue in Northeast, you get to see how domain knowledge in one sphere is not adequate to deal with public policy issues. Now, whether you have this quality or not, I mean the potential to be a generalist, to be able to take a broad view of various aspects of a particular matter, is what is going to be judged, right? And in this, column 6 is very important because it shows your interests. Now, a word about hobbies. There's a difference between an extracurricular activity and hobby. Hobby requires a passion and willingness to pursue this hobby over a long period of time. It's not just casual interest in a certain matter. So, if you say this is my hobby, you have to be a bit careful. They might ask you, is this real a hobby or a temporary interest? Okay? So, from this, I would mention that awareness is not just knowing about it. What is needed is critical awareness about India's internal environment and India's external environment. Now, this critical awareness must cover security, economic, political, cultural, and other aspects, and wide-ranging interest. Okay, you see, a critical thinking capacity requires, first, LOC refers to only Jammu and Kashmir. A very clear statement. You don't go into details. No. Where was it settled, fixed, determined? Shimla Agreement. Which year was it? 19? You should be very clear. Which year was it? Please check, I'm not going to tell you. Just find out. In 1971, Indo-Bangladesh war took place. Shimla Agreement was signed after that. Okay. Which month? You must know the details. These days you have smartphones. All that you have to do is to just press your finger. Second question is, what is the sanctity of the LOC? Why is LOC sacrosanct? And what was LOC before? Right? And what is the area under occupation of Pakistan? POK? What is the size of POK? Can you tell us what proportion of Kashmir is under POK? Vague reply is not useful. Exactly what is the proportion of area under POK? What is the area under occupation of China? Every day you are hearing that under illegal occupation of China and Pakistan. But what is the area under occupation? So an administrative mind requires a bit of attention to these details. And you have to go back little. If you are a candidate for the foreign service, you ought to know. Number one, before LOC, what was it? What was the line that divided Kashmir? Do you know about it? You are all born much later, I understand. But nevertheless, when you look at these problems from an administrative perspective, you have to be sure about facts. It was ceasefire line in January 1948. The ceasefire line was reaffirmed at Tashkent Agreement in 1966, in the 66th January, when Lal Bahadur Shastri passed away. One of our distinguished seniors, Mr. D.R. Kohli, ICS, who was at Tashkent during the discussions. When we met him much later, I asked him, "Sir, why did we agree to hand over Haji Pir Pass to Pakistan, give back, return the territory that we occupied?" He smiled and said, "These Ruskies, Russians, and helped by the West, they put hydraulic pressure on us." So CFL again was crossed during 1970 war. CFL has become LOC. And if you see, we are in occupation of 44% of the geographical area of old Kashmir Riyasat, the state of Kashmir. So these facts you must know. In the same manner, you should know the difference between LSC and LOC. What's the difference? But which area? Again, what is McMahon line? So, if, and from which point to which point? That is important. So what I'm only saying that give some attention to details. Because here, if you give a wrong reply, etc., it might create an adverse opinion. Because these are burning issues. Similarly, Doklam standoff. Take the Arab-Israeli relations, the visit of Israeli Prime Minister. Okay. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu. Where is Israel? When was Israel created? Which year? 1948. What exactly was the situation before Israel was born? What is the consequence of creation of Israel? No. Why did you be loud? You are trying to be IAS officers. You should be confident, Say, whatever you say with confidence. It meant division of Palestine. Okay? And what is Jerusalem? See, all I am asking you, ladies and gentlemen, look at these facts and then form your opinion. That is absolutely necessary. Okay? Jerusalem was already divided. And then what happened subsequently? The 67 war. What is West Bank? West Bank of what? Bank is always with reference to a river. What was the river? River? Jordan. Say clear. And what is this issue of settlements? See? And finally, what's the difference between the Jews and Christians and Jews and Arabs, Muslims? Why? They are all from the religion of the, what is called the book, the Holy Bible. What is the problem? Why are they killing each other all the time? What's the difference between Shias and Sunnis? For hundreds of years they're killing each other. Why? What are the differences? Would you be able to throw some light on this? What is the point of conflict between the Jews and the Christians? I give a lead. When I went to Israel, and decided to visit Bethlehem, where Lord Jesus was born, my Israeli diplomat friend said, when you go to Bethlehem, please remember, Jesus was born a Jew, he died a Jew. But why was this conflict? So, constructive interest in current affairs is a requirement to be in the civil service, because that gives you a capacity to look at things from multiple directions. Could anyone tell me what is the difference between Judaism and Christianity? Jesus was a Jew. In Calcutta there is a church, the Church of the Christ the King. The King of what? The King of Jews. You go to any church, you see the crucifix, there are 4 Latin words. Have you noticed, any of you? INRI. Jesus of Nazareth, Rex Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth, King of Jews. But why? So, to understand the Arab-Israeli problem, it is not enough that you see, few facts around. But you must go back and have some ideas about the Palestinian problem and India's stand on the Palestinian problem. And also the Israeli strength in science and technology and why we are importing arms, sophisticated technology from Israel, and the latest deal that had been signed between Government of India and Israel. So, it's not simple event, it is not event. It is the outcome of many events, of many, many years. You ought to have a mature understanding of these issues. That's what is expected, okay? And interest in economic issues, GST, and the issue of inequality. If you see the latest issue of the Economist of London, there's a front page report on India. India's missing middle class. The growth has not been producing an expanded middle class in India, which it did in other countries. So it's interesting to know the facts of inequality in India. And about various issues like the Naga problem. You must know about the genesis of the problem, the Naxalite problems. If you happen to be from Chhattisgarh and some areas, chances are that you might be asked. In that case, it would be useful for you to know the theoretical basis of left-wing extremism. What is meant by Naxalite? Where was Naxalbari? When? What is Maoism? What's the difference between Maoism and Marxism, Leninism. These small little things, but extremely important. And the question will be, why is it that the movement is getting strength in the tribal areas? What are the issues of tribal? What are the issues of tribal development? So there is no end. But whatever is extremely important today, like new ideas like Bitcoin, I am totally ignorant about it. But those of you who have done computer science, you might be asked, what do you think of the future of Bitcoin as a substitute for what you call regular currency? Okay. So, when you participate in the discussion, your demeanor is very important. You know what is meant by demeanor? In legal language, it is the bearing of the witness. So we have to comment on the demeanor of the witness, whether the witness's demeanor is such that gives credence to his evidence. Everybody will come and say, "Main jo kahunga, sach kahunga," but he will be probably saying just the opposite. Therefore, the demeanor is important. So, if you look at draft, it is like your horoscope. Only thing is that you have signed it yourself. Therefore, you must stand by every word that you have mentioned here. And remember, board is not there to unnerve you or to put you into difficulty. They are there to help you. And you should also help, cooperate in the process. And avoid being impressionistic. That is, you should not give an opinion without knowing something about it. You see, that is a measure to find out your curiosity and your interest in other cultures and societies. Take Nepal. How little we know about Nepal. What is the present political situation in Nepal? What is the implication of KP Oli becoming the Prime Minister? What is the relation of Nepal with China now? How does it impact us? In the same manner, the Rohingya problem. What was India's stand? And how are we concerned about it? About the illegal migration? Our relations with Maldives, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan. So, the thing is that you have to take intelligent, constructive interest in these matters, and your views should be informed views, not impressionistic. Take the Jews and the Christians. The only difference is that Moses said that I will come to deliver you. I will come once. Ek bar main aunga. Moses, who is also called Hazrat Musa by the Muslims. So, when Jesus was born, and some people called him the Son of God, King of Jews, etc., the Jews did not accept him. So, no. You are just one among many. So, therefore, you are not the last prophet. The prophet is yet to come. So, Jesus felt extremely unhappy. So he told his disciples, Peter, Paul, Andrew, and James, that if the Jews don't listen to me, spread my message among the Gentiles. Gentiles means who are not Jews. So this is how these four persons, they spread Christianity to Syria, Lebanon, and then to Rome, to India, everywhere. After many years, when Prophet was born, he also claimed, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. I am the prophet. The Jews said, I'm sorry, we don't accept it. Christians said, no, because the prophet has already come and gone. He came and went, Jesus. So this is the reason why they're fighting for centuries. So these basic facts must be with your knowledge to enable you to understand, the basics of these issues. Human problems don't get solved in one day. They tend to linger. The task of administration is to understand this and manage these lingering problems without destroying the civilization. So, in this way, one must look at it. And one point was made by a French author, which is a kind of a opposite view of Abraham Lincoln's. That democracy means of the people, for the people, and by the people. What he said is this: democracy may be interpreted not as a government by the people, but as with the consent of the people, with professionals and civil servants making most of the decisions. So, governance ultimately is the task of the bureaucracy. Charles de Gaulle, once in a fit of exasperation and frustration, he said, France is not a democracy, it is a bureaucracy. That is de Gaulle said. Why? Because he found that by and large, the decisions are taken by the civil servants. Now, the permanent services, therefore, have an important role, a critical role in the government. Why? Because of the concept of checks and balances introduced in the Constitution of India, and in all countries like ours, which belong to what we call common law countries, means where British laws of jurisprudence, principles, conventions are followed. Okay? Now, this is founded on the principle that no institution or individual can be endowed with too much of power, because power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, in this structure, civil service holds an extremely critical role as the permanent link in the democracy. They are the ultimate repositories of rules, regulations, and conventions. And they are accountable to the designated superior authority, or ultimately the courts. Look at this 2G case. You must have seen. The accountability is ultimately to the courts. And this begins right from day one. For instance, under the Arms Act, a district magistrate has the power to issue arms license, a license to an individual to buy personal weapons. Now, Arms Act lays down its power and the procedure to be followed. And the procedure is important. In this particular case, the procedure is that you must get a report from the police station and the tahsildar about the particular person. A few things have to be seen. Your financial position, the security of your house, whether the weapon could be easily stolen. If you live in a thatched house, he can't possibly keep a gun. Should be man of means, your character, antecedents, etc., etc. Now, look at the way things work. If, before you take a decision, and the reports are before you, which are not so favorable, there is a telephone call. कि ये हमारा भतीजा है, असल में आज भी ठीक है, ये जो गुड अच्छा है, थोड़ा सा इधर उधर हो सकता है, लेकिन वो ठीक है, वो आप देख कर दीजिए उसको. Now, if you do this, it is a breach of trust, and you are also endangering public safety. That man might misuse the gun for a variety of purposes and become a nuisance also in the society. like this. So every small action that you take has implications for public interest, public security, public safety. So you have to take a judicious view purely on the basis of facts and circumstances. This is a duty. In the same manner, administrative justice is delivered under Motor Vehicles Act in the matter of issuance of driving license. Here in Delhi it is a common practice. ये हमारा भतीजा है, लड़का है, असल में ड्राइविंग उनका आता है लेकिन वो टेस्ट में फेल हो गया, तो आप जरा कुछ कीजिए इनको. How to deal with this? Now here, give two options. One, you extend his learner's license. Till you pass, you will not be granted regular license. You will be the daughter of the most prominent person in the country, but no. My interest is to see that road safety is not compromised. Now this is your public duty. Public interest demands security and safety. And therefore, any compromise ultimately will reflect poorly on your capacity to hold that position and exercise that power. So, the short point here, the board would like to see whether you have that kind of a character. Potential. So, integrity is most important. Whether you are amenable to influence by other sources will reflect poorly on you. Therefore, the questions that may be asked are basically designed to see your capacity to think, argue, take a logical, correct action, and your commitment to the system, the law, and the procedure. The foundation of Indian administration is sanctity of the procedural rights of the citizens, which are as important as fundamental rights. And this is one thing that enabled British to rule over this country for a long time. There's a Hindi expression called das namburi. Aapka malum hai? What does it mean? Can you tell? What does it mean? Why is a man called das namburi? That is, he is not a good character, he is a bad character. But it has its roots in section 110 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Under the Code of Criminal Procedure, as a executive magistrate or district magistrate in our time, every magistrate has certain powers. It begins with this. Whereas, I am satisfied on the basis of a report or otherwise. Now, see, these words are loaded. I may get a report, but even otherwise, if it is brought within my knowledge that such and such person is a bad character, he is a habitual recipient of stolen property, he is a loudmouth, he picks up quarrels in the neighborhood, he is a bullying type and tries to cause annoyance to the people, etc., etc. I have the power to serve a notice on him under section 110 to show cause why he should not sign an affidavit of good conduct that मैं कुछ नहीं करूँगा, भले आदमी बन के रहूँगा, I am not going to do this, going to do that, etc. But that is not enough. There has to be surety. His uncle will come, he said, मैं guarantee हूँ. That's not enough. You produce 10,000 rupees here and it will be deposited in the government treasury. If you misbehave, then you will be put behind the bar and your 10,000 rupees also will be confiscated by the government. This is an enormous power, but to be exercised by a person in his own discretion. Just look at the words. Whereas, I am satisfied on the basis of a report which might be from the police, or otherwise. Otherwise means it is purely my discretion. But I should be aware of the consequences of my action on the individual. The British ruled over India by exercising powers under 110. Because a man who is acted, who faces this kind of action, he's socially, boycotted. His image comes down. He's finished. He becomes a dust number. So this is how administration was carried out without use of force. So, point I am only trying to highlight is that it is your personal decision, discretion, judgment, which counts. Whether you have the capacity to form that judgment is really the basic subject of interview, basic purpose of the interview. Now, we must remember that these days, the word governance is very much being used. If you are asked that, Mr. So-and-so, you are an engineer, why would you like to join civil service? A usual question. The answer might be that I would like to be a part of the governance of this country. And what is governance? There's a definition, there's a simple definition, is that the governance is the exercise of economic, political, and administrative authority to manage a country's affairs at all levels. Now, this definition is comprehensive. Governance is the exercise of economic, political, and administrative authority to manage a country's affairs at all levels, which means you are an authority. Okay? So, to become an authority means you must have the moral authority and the professional integrity and the professional competence. So, these three things have to be ingrained, developed, cultivated. There's a complex definition of governance which you may like to see in the 2017 report of the World Bank. The World Bank publishes the annual report, the World Development Report. This points out something more. Governance is the process through which state and non-state actors interact to design and implement policies within a given set of formal and informal rules that shape and are shaped by power. So power is an important factor. This report defines power. Please note, this report defines power as the ability of groups and individuals to make others act in the interest of those groups and individuals and to bring about specific outcomes. This is the first time that World Bank accepts that in a state there may be some dominant groups who are capable of enforcing their interests as the interests of the country, and therefore the governance as a process has the role of a mediator. So you have to see that in every work that you do, there is a weaker party and there is a stronger party. And here, therefore, empathy for the poor, sometimes going out of the way, is what is required. A question is sometimes asked in the UPSC about the people below poverty line. Suppose you are so-and-so, and a widow turns up, complaining that her name was not included in the BPL list, but she is also eligible for assistance. What will you do? A bureaucratic view is that, sorry, your name is not there, therefore I can't consider. But morality requires that you give a patient hearing and then find an innovative way to help her by asking her to file an application, accept her application also for allotment of a house, and in the meantime, subject to verification, you might as well put her in the BPL list after making some kind of a preliminary inquiry. But if you say no straight away, reject the application, that would be a poor reflection. So in the entire process of interview, please remember that you have to be logical, objective, and display your capacity to think about various possibilities and linking the issues which may appear to be unconnected. That is what generalist is all about. Any question?
The interviewer asked us that, as you told us, the fight taking between Shias and Sunnis, Jews and Christians. What is your opinion about it? And if you would be one of these, what would you do?
You see, if I am asked this question, I would quote Karl Marx. Religion is the opium of mankind. And change the subject completely. Because no religion tells you to kill others for this or that. Therefore, it is most unfortunate. Isn't it? And if you read Bible, etc., much of it, frankly, has no logic. For instance, the concept of chosen people. God has chosen the Jews. They are the chosen people of God. God cannot have that kind of a, discretionary power. God should be equal, should be free from any bias. He should be a generalist. God should have the qualities of any IAS aspirant. Why should he choose one group of people as the favored ones? I see no logic in it. Absolutely. So you can dismiss the whole thing by quoting Marx. That Marx, though he is a Jew, but he said that religion is the opiate of mankind. The human beings have been addicted to religion. But that sums up the matter. Okay? Any other? It's open house now. Please feel free. Is there anything else you want to know? Oh, yes, service preferences. You see, these cadres are really based on the union list of the Constitution. So there are certain subjects which are in the state list, the union list, and you have the concurrent list. Now this civil service cadres of the central government belong to this union list, like customs and central excise, post and telegraph, railways, then defense accounts, then Indian Defense Estate Service. So all these cadres, they are what you call a part of the central list, including audit and accounts, postal accounts, whatever. You have B group where you have civil service for the union territories of Pondicherry and etc. etc. This is because the union territories are directly administered by the center. Then you have your all India services, which are common to the center and the states like IAS and the IPS, and you have foreign service. Foreign service and the IAS are placed on the same footing. You look at the pay commission's report. Whatever is recommended for IAS is applicable to the Indian Foreign Service. In our times, IAS and Foreign Service belong to Cat 1, Category 1 services. There is a separate examination. There are 2 extra papers which you have to appear. And a stricter knowledge of English was a precondition. Or more demanding, stricter is not the word, a more demanding knowledge of English was a precondition for entering into these 2 services. Now, ball game had changed, but your choice is like this. There are cadres which have a lot of interaction with the civil population and the state governments. In this group, I'll put is IAS, IPS, then Indian Audit and Account Service, because they maintain the accounts of the state governments, the auditor, CAG, AG, etc. Plus these field civil services like Pondicherry, sorry, etc. And the services which predominantly entirely deal with central service, like income tax, and customs and central excise, postal, all this. And we have some interesting cadres like Indian Trade Service, which is a new service created to promote international trade and commerce. The subject is very interesting, and it has a good future, urban based. And you have services like the railway cadres. The railways have least interface with the people, because only when you buy a railway ticket or visit the railway station, then you get to know the railways. And the railway towns, etc., are separated under different laws and all. So if you want to have interface with the people, then you should give preference to those cadres which mean interaction with the people, greater interaction with the people. But essentially, the services which have, like IAS or IPS, which have connections with the state administration primarily, and they are common to both, they have a greater interface with the people. That's the position. So once you give your preferences, one question will be asked: if you had given preference to a group B over a group A question may arise whether you are a man of ordinary prudence. The word ordinary prudence, the man of ordinary prudence, was coined by Warren Hastings way back in 1773 when he created the institution of district magistrate and collectors in Bengal. Hastings was an interesting man. So he thought that every rule, if you want to bind a native, put this expression, a man of ordinary prudence. That means a man of ordinary intelligence, ability to know what is good or what is wrong, whether he should do this or that. The question is that group B is a feeder cadre. Group B is a feeder cadre. It's a gazetted post of the central government, but feeder cadre. So you have to wait for 15 years to be promoted to group A. In case of civil service, you might get promoted to IAS. So why is it that a man of ordinary prudence should take the plunge into the examination and would still prefer to be a feeder grade officer? You have to justify. If any of you have put any group B cadre service above, you have to give reasons for it. Take for instance, if you hail from Pondicherry and you are given Pondicherry civil service, I say fine, it's a good option for me, I'll be able to stay at my home. Perfectly sensible. Second, if you give foreign service a very low preference, which I find some people give, it requires some answer. Why? One answer could be, sir, I don't feel like going abroad. मैं देशी हूँ, स्वदेशी type, so I'd like to live. That it will be very difficult. Given the fact that the Indians go abroad so well, and they're so keen to leave India. There's a joke that the Indians are all patriots. Like all patriotic Indians, the moment I landed in US, I applied for green card. This is the level of patriotism of Indians. The moment you land up there, the HIV visa wala, the first thing that they do is to apply for a green card for permanent residence. This is so much, this is about your loyalty to the country, etc. Fine. So the question will be that if you give low preference to foreign service, you have to say that I have better appreciation. I am more keen to serve in the country and for a longer period. Foreign service means an exile from India. In fact, that would be a good answer. Sir, I don't wish to be an exile from my country. Means you have to spend 30 years of your life. That could be calamity. So you could frankly say why, but why you would not like to join. But rather than trying to say that I don't wish to be a part of the country's diplomatic service. Why not? It's a very important work, very sensitive, strategic. It broadens your horizon.
So what if it is the first choice, and what would be the correct answer for that?
First choice. Then answer should be that I'm interested in international relations and India's policy towards other countries and would like to be a part of these national efforts. I'd like to be part of the core of the diplomatic efforts of this country. It will give me an opportunity to interact with the United Nations, others, I will be part of the strategic decision-making apparatus of the country. Foreign service holds a unique strategic position. And then you can add that I'm interested in learning a foreign language, not necessarily French, which is the preferred language, but Chinese, why not Japanese? So you have to learn a foreign language. It means understanding a new soul, a new country. Foreign service offers great opportunities for advancement in career, global recognition of your work. In fact, if I may say here, you know about Sir C.P. Srivastava, not known very well. Sir C.P. Srivastava is an IAS officer of 48th batch from UP Kada. He was Joint Secretary to Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri. But after Shastriji's death, he joined Ministry of Shipping. At that time, was a nondescript kind of a unimportant ministry, and many of his friends conveyed their deep condolences to him for being posted in the Ministry of Shipping. This I heard from one of his colleagues. What C.P. Srivastava did, he created Shipping Corporation of India. Not only that, then he took deep interest in maritime governance of the world and argued and succeeded in creating what is called UMO, United Nations Maritime Organization, which is one of the 17 specialized agencies of the United Nations. He laid down the entire laws, international laws and regulations for maritime governance and created a university in Sweden for international maritime governance. He was the only IAS officer who was knighted by Queen Elizabeth, and he recently passed away at Turin in Italy, and he wrote extremely valuable pieces on the international maritime governance and considered to be the father of UMO. And he was a student of history. That's important. So it is this kind of quality, what we look for. So if you are asked this question, yes, I should like to be a part of the foreign policy making apparatus of the country and be a part of developing relations among nations. Right? Also, keeping in view India's interest. And it will be very satisfying to me personally. I would like to have a chance to interact with people all over the world. Okay. Any thought? One thing, eye contact. Eye contact is very important. It should not be a one-to-one contact. When you see it, you relax. And when you make a point, you should not be tense, but look at the others also. Okay? And restrict your hand movement. See, our TV anchors have made it a national disaster. That people have this habit of hands don't speak. They don't produce any noise, only distract attention of people. They may be looking at your hand rather than what you are talking. So restrict your hand movement. That's important. And don't betray any bias or prejudice about any group, any region, or any people in the world. So if Shia Sunni matters come, you should express general sympathy for all those who are affected by violence. Yes, it is very unfortunate. Yes. And speak in a measured way. When you speak, you have to restrain yourself and make one point, and then when you complete your sentence or whatever you have to say, as I mentioned, because I found many candidates just wait for the nod of the chairperson to stop. No, you should stop on your own. So, any other question? You are free to ask me whatever you feel like. Bataiye, why not?
Sir, if there is any matter about which I know something, not everything. Sir, if there is something particular about the topic, should I say something?
Yes, whatever you know. See, the whole idea is not to test your knowledge. Your knowledge, your merit have been already tested. The idea is your ability to participate in a conversation. Just think of a matter like this. As you said, I know something. Think of something that you know about something. And then you can share with us any subject.
Sir, there is one question. Sir, there is a compulsion that is put on candidate to speak only in English language or in particular language, then the selection.
I think you have opted here. There is an option.
Yeah. But sometimes we find that the candidates who are preparing, they find himself or herself that they are facing somewhere the discrimination by the administration. Maybe not directly, but indirectly. I feel so.
You see, if you have opted for English, it is expected that you will not speak Khichdi language. Because there may be a chairman, there may be a member who may not know. And then there is a problem. If you allow, there are, how many languages are there in India? So if you mix it up, then it becomes incomprehensible. And it becomes difficult for the board to judge your competence. Because you have opted for English. Therefore, you are duty bound to speak, because you must have been confident enough to opt for English. Having opted, why should you back out? Avoid using words like matlab. No, matlab has nothing to do with this. Use English in a simple manner. Clear English. That's what is needed. Because if you mix some other language, it might create problem because of one reason. It might be construed, if this is allowed as an act of favor to a particular linguistic group, to the disadvantage of others. Suppose somebody would like to use some Tamil expressions, the way you would like to do Hindi, then the members may be completely ignorant about it. Or somebody wants to use some Mizo language. What do you do? Then there is just unmanageable situation. So therefore, what is called level playing field, you must understand. So once you have opted to play the game according to the rules, you should not opt out of the game. And that might be taken adversely as a kind of withdrawal syndrome. Okay. Any other doubt? Tell me.
What if someone has worked abroad and he was trying much better salary than this? So how
In what way would the question be framed? Mr. So-and-so, it seems that you have been earning a lot of money. Why do you wish to come here? I would have quoted from the Holy Bible, man shall not live by bread alone. Salary is not the only thing in life. Serving here, serving the people, being in India, to me is much more important than the sums that I had earned before. That's not important. You should clearly say, money is not what drives me to appear for the exam. I have seen many people who had been in shipping, they are earning thousands of pounds, but still they opted and they joined the service. You might say that yes, but I would like to be exiled from my country, I would like to come back. And money is not the only thing for me. State clearly. Because hinting about money means the famous Hindi expression by a politician, paisa khuda to nahi, fir bhi khuda se kam mile.
so this is what
Now that philosophy, I don't subscribe to this kind of philosophy. That you will say. So,
as you said, sir, okay, finally you can compensate by telling this one.
Huh.
So in real time, whenever I say this, nobody believes. No, it's materialistic, but finally you want money.
no. If that is so, then you should not opt for civil service. So you say very clearly, if suppose you are earning a lot of money there, sir, I would much rather like to be in this country, serve the country. Money is not a consideration for me.
But sir, my doubt is, nobody believes this. If I'm telling the fact, this is the reason even I was drawing much more skill than this, what I'm going to get. Nobody believes this. It might be something else you have in your mind.
No, but the board will believe you. Because you can say that if I was so money-minded, I would not have taken the trouble of appearing for the examination. The fact that I have sat for the examination shows my determination, grit, and intention to serve the country. And for me, sir, money is not the only consideration. That should be a frank statement. Okay?
What type of question asks a cadre preference? Cadre preference services.
Cadre preference. Well, the cadre rules have changed now. I think I got a message. Now, your preference now, in view of the recent changes, is really not very important. The rank you get will determine, and the system that has been introduced. The idea is to see that people don't hang around their own region. See? So you could say that while I prefer to stay close to my home, I have no objection to serve other states, in other cultural, administrative environments. Every state has its strengths and weaknesses. Many of my friends from UP who served in Assam, they're very happy in Assam, away from the caste-based politics or all that kind of thing. Here, you can work in a more free environment. The people take you for what you are worth. But if you are asked to justify, then you should say, sir, I have strong reason to believe that I will serve the area where I was born, etc., and the area is close to that area. I will be able to serve them better. Because I know the people in the society more. That's it. Any other question? Yeah.
The stance for opting IPS over IAS.
Good question. You have to say, I am interested in crime prevention and crime detection. The investigation part is what I am interested in. I like reading detective novels, crime stories, etc. And also I feel that the IPS at higher level gives me a chance to take part in strategic, areas of the country. I might join intelligence or RAW, exposure to global power game. So you could say that I feel as policeman, I'll be more effective in basic police duties. Rather, the basic police work attracts me, like prevention of crime, detection of crimes, and to be a part of the law and order machinery of the country. But one wrong impression that people have, that the police are responsible for law and order. No. You have to read the Code of Criminal Procedure. It is the district magistrate which is responsible for maintenance of law and order. And under Section 4 of the Indian Police Act, the superintendent of police has to work under the control of the district magistrate. After the demolition of Babri Masjid, the Director General of Police, UP, submitted an affidavit before Liberal Commission. You know what he stated? He said, as the Director General of Police, my job is to provide the district magistrate with necessary police force to maintain law and order. And I have not defaulted in my responsibility. Therefore, demolition is not my concern. My job is over. It is the responsibility of the district magistrate. And he has to take action to prevent formation of an unlawful assembly. His duty is to disperse the unlawful assembly by use of civil force. And if the civil force was found adequate, civil force means the police force. The district magistrate alone has the power to requisition the army. And under the Code of Criminal Procedure, upon receipt of such a request, the army authorities shall comply with the request. Even in Delhi, where police commissioner system has been introduced, the power to call out the army has not been given to the police commissioner. That power rests with the Indian Home Secretary. And he will act on the advice of the Lieutenant Governor. You see, the whole system that the Brits had created in India is full of checks and balances. No instrument of governance is allowed to override other limits. That's India, by the way, India has been ranked 32nd in World Democracy Index. You may check internet. Every year, the Economist of London prepares a democracy index. We are doing very well. We are 32nd. United States is 21st. Why? Because the institutions of governance in India are founded on rule of law and the principle of checks and balances. Pakistan is an authoritarian country. It is not considered a democracy. Please understand that the role of the civil service in a country is different. It varies from the form of government to another form of government. Suppose you are a mechanical engineer posted in Burma, responsible for railway, rolling stock, wagons, etc., etc. And if you are posted in Burma and India, your job is not much different. If you are a doctor, same. But if you are a civil servant in India and a civil servant in Burma, you are under different working conditions. Because in Burma, army controls the civil administration. The ministries of defense, border areas, and foreign affairs are controlled by the army. So there is no civil service. In Pakistan, for instance, there is no rule of law. There cannot be rule of law because there are two courts, Sharia courts and you have the normal courts. Appeal against Sharia courts shall not lie with the Supreme Court. So you cannot have rule of law in a situation of multiple judiciary and multiple laws for different citizens. So the important point that you should note that the principle of checks and balances requires maintenance of discipline within the organs. Take the judge's case. Interesting. If you look at the judge's case, a lot had been written. Please read the letter of Justice Chalmeshwar published in the Indian Express. Have you seen that? Please read that letter. The first part of the letter says that ever since the establishment of charter courts in Calcutta, Madras and Bombay, the judiciary in the Indian context had been functioning on the basis of conventions, practices and rules which have their foundations in the Anglo-Saxon principles of jurisprudence, unquote. In other words, the convention has the force of law. That is the main issue. Now, they demanded impeachment of the Chief Justice of India. Obviously, nobody had taken that call. So now, this has become an internal matter to resolve by the Chief Justice, Honorable Chief Justice, and other judges. So, what I'm trying to hint is that the democracy essentially is a form of government in which there is a scheme of separation of powers, and therefore you have the problem of conflict of interest. The issue of parliamentary secretaries in Delhi, for instance, is very important. So, if you opt for, say, police, yes, but you must give cogent reasons, like your interest in criminal justice system, in detection and prevention of crimes, and in maintaining peace and order. That should be your interest. That should be a good reply. Plus, opportunities for developing expertise in foreign intelligence or in other matters, in anti-corruption spheres, I'll get an opportunity to take part in these substantive activities of the government. Okay. Any other thought? Please.
With respect to IFS, foreign services.
Not services, singular. You see,
foreign service.
by the way, in India, this civil services is ungrammatical. It's not English, but it has become Indian English, so there's nothing you could do about it. But civil service is generic term. Indian foreign service is service. There is no plural, no two services. Okay, tell me.
With respect to Indian foreign service, there is stratification of functions under cultural, economical, political heads also. And there are multiple heads. Is there anything during the interview that affects the posting into the functional responsibilities after appointment is due?
No, you are asking a hypothetical question which has no relevance to the interview.
So it has nothing to do with...
No. what exactly do you have in mind? I couldn't get you.
With respect to other services, there is a defined job profile. But with respect to IFS, it depends on the political scenario of the country that you are posted to, or the kind of functionary stratification is there.
No. Not at all. Not at all. You see, Indian Foreign Service originated in Foreign and Political Department of the British government. Before independence, there was no Foreign Service, Foreign and Political Department. Political Department dealt with relations between the British government and the native states, like Hyderabad, Mysore, Junagadh, Kashmir, like that. Officers were selected, ICS and also officers from the army were selected to this department, for appointment to this department. For instance, Sir Henry McMahon was Foreign Secretary. Similarly, Sir Mortimer Durand Lyne, he was also a great football enthusiast. The Durand Cup football tournament was started by him. So they were Foreign Secretaries, but Sir Durand was from the Indian Civil Service, whereas Sir Henry McMahon was from the army. Okay? Now, after independence, the Foreign Service has one clear charter, that is to represent Indian interests in other countries of the world. You represent the President of India as the ambassador of your country. And in the order that is given, the President will mention that I am sending a good and honest citizen of India as the ambassador. The good and honest citizen. This is a practice followed from the British period. But primarily, you are responsible for maintaining relations with other countries in all spheres: economic, political, military, cultural, social, religious, come what may. As the ambassador in Thailand, one of my friends had contributed a lot on behalf of India to archaeological expeditions to restore the old cultural links between Thailand and India. In the same manner, if you are in Burma, if you are in Indonesia, one of your major activities will be to promote and strengthen and intensify our cultural links with those countries. At the same time, economic, military, just as Israel and India are entering into a negotiation. Our ambassador in Israel might have done all the groundwork, prepared the whole proposal, negotiated, and then presented this before the government. So this is what is called diplomacy. You have to protect and preserve and expand the interests of India in those countries. And the most challenging job for the Foreign Service is a posting in Pakistan. And the most competent people are sent there. Also, a posting in China is a great challenge. You have to learn the language. A posting in Nepal is equally important, because Nepal is passing through a turbulent period. Okay? A posting in Bangladesh is very important because of the fact that the Chinese are also moving into Burma and Bangladesh in a big way. So, therefore, these are highly important issues, strategic, sensitive, and one has to have a long-term vision. It's not a short-term kind of a job-oriented. It requires painstaking efforts. And of course, language skills are important. A diplomat should know how to talk, how to restrain his temper. And therefore, to enable the diplomats to talk to each other properly, the language used is interesting. You have to always say, Your Excellency. So it is not Mr. So-and-so. You have to address your counterparts as, Your Excellency may be pleased to know, or I have the honor to bring to the kind notice of the Excellency, like that. So use of this kind of expressions is a matter of diplomatic courtesy and it requires cultivation. And one must be able to speak, give lectures, sometimes on non-issues. You have to say the sky is blue, the ocean is beautiful. So this articulation is an important quality. So if you are a candidate for the foreign service, and of course there will be a foreign service serving or retired officer, we would like to see whether you will be able to fit the bill. So here, of course, you will be given training in these matters. Also, they would like to see whether you have the potential to learn a foreign language well enough to be able to address a meeting. That is important. The present Foreign Secretary is fluent in Chinese. He could deliver a lecture without any difficulty. He could read and write also. That requires lifetime's efforts. So whether you have got that kind of aptitude is that we see. And it could be found out. It's not difficult. And one way to do it is to see your present level of English. Then one could make out that yes, he has the potential to pick up French or any other language. Take Arabic, for example. It is very much necessary for us to know Arabic if we are serving in the Middle East. Arabic, Persian are very much important. So this aptitude is what we will be looking for. Okay? So you should not bother about activities now. If you have opted for foreign service, you have to be dead sure about international events, like say Arab-Israeli conflict, Iran-US problem, Donald Trump's utterances, India-US relations, like this. Okay? Yeah. No, it will be appreciated that you have appeared early. You have appeared earlier? One time. What was your experience? Tell me.
Most of the questions were right, but for two wrong answers, what I marked, I disqualified. But most of the questions were.
What was the question? Can you share unless you have objection to it? Any subject that you might recall.
What were the right questions were asked?
No, I'm not. What was the question? What was the subject? That is what I was trying to say. On what subject were you asked? You have short memory. These things people remember for now. For any?
Mediterranean Sea question was asked. So it was all about what countries surround it, but I was unable to answer that.
Okay. I'm glad that you shared this. This question was asked in the background of the refugee crisis. Because Mediterranean, according to Kishore Mehbubani, is a pond. You know about Kishore Mehbubani? No. I'm quite fond of quoting him. Kishore Mehbubani is a Singaporean diplomat, a few batches junior to us, who served in the Singapore Foreign Service, a very distinguished diplomat and author, presently director of Lee Kuan Yew Center for Public Policy. He writes frequently in the Financial Times, the New York Times, and leading journals of the world. Kishore had argued in one article that Mediterranean is like a pond. The people across the Mediterranean, Africa, countries like Egypt, Libya, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, etc. They are ready to just cross over. So, Mediterranean is hardly a barrier. Rather, it is a passage to Europe, and it had happened. Because many of these countries were francophone, like Algeria, where people speak French. So they find it easy to go to Europe. They speak the language. Libya was under Italy, so a lot of Libyans had gone across to Italy. So, idea was to discuss the refugee crisis with you. So they wanted to know whether you are aware of the Mediterranean. So in the same manner, just look at it. In our Republic Day parade, the ASEAN countries will be represented. So you ought to know about ASEAN. How many members are there in ASEAN? Do you know? 10. What are these countries? Tell me. What are these 10 countries? Why is it that we are inviting all of them? What is our trade with ASEAN? Excellent, very good. And what are the free trade agreements that we have signed, including one on services that have been signed? And what are the prospects? And why is it that ASEAN is important? That means you should be familiar with Act East policy of the Prime Minister. What is meant by Act East policy? And what are the major initiatives? Take this Kaladan multinodal project. Kaladan. It goes to Situi, known as Akia before. Now, that's also the point where the Chinese gas and oil pipelines begin, originate. The pipelines go right up to Ruili in South China, in Yunnan province. So, there is some kind of convergence of interests of India and China in peace and prosperity of Burma. So, why is ASEAN important? And which country of ASEAN has invested heavily in India? Singapore. So, these are the issues. So what are the reasons for strategic importance of ASEAN? What are the important waterways, like Strait of Malacca? Then what is it about South China Sea dispute? And what is India's role in ASEAN? What status do you have? That you must know. Isn't it? Do you have a position in ASEAN? We have a legal position. If we are trying for foreign service, this question may be asked. ASEAN, where does India stand in ASEAN? Do you have a standing? Do you have a status? As what? We must find out. And because of ASEAN, Myanmar is important for us, because Myanmar is a member of the ASEAN. So our entry point is Myanmar. We have borders with Myanmar. Therefore, peace and prosperity of Myanmar is in your interest. Okay? Saudi Arabia, Middle East. How is our policy on Israel going to impact our relations with the Middle East? And then the question may be, what is the size of our workforce in Middle East? How many Indians work there? And what is the size of the remittances that we get? Question may be asked. We are getting a lot of remittances. Now, if you check the remittances, you'll find an interesting fact. The poor workers who go to Middle East, they really send the money back home. The worthy sons of educated people who go to America, they don't send any money. They know. They would rather spend money there, invest there, buy a house or whatever, and do that. Remittances primarily come from the poor workers in the Middle East and the Gulf. So these figures should be taught. And then, coming to think of it, what are the other countries? How much remittances Bangladesh get? A huge amount. So, idea is that you have to be a bit inquisitive. Relate your country to other countries. All right, I have the figures of remittances. I would like to see how much does Pakistan get? How much does Bangladesh get? Nepal, for instance, is heavily dependent on remittances. 35% of GDP of Nepal is derived from remittances. It's a remittance economy, actually. The main foreign exchange that Nepal gets is only through remittances. So this way, like the Global Innovation Index, a question may be asked, what is the economic strategy, the Make in India campaign that Modi ji has started? What is our innovation capability? We have the National Science, Technology, Innovation Policy 2013. Just look at it. Where does India stand in the innovation index of the world? And when you see India's position, you also, at the back of your mind, you should have the aptitude. Where does China stand? And where we stand? South Korea, Taiwan. So the horizon has to be broad enough. And that requires a spirit of inquiry, inquisitiveness, interest in other cultures and other societies. So from now on up to interview, time may not be much, but what you can do is to usefully spend your time in looking at the newspapers and going beyond the news. A little more. Climate change is one very important issue. What has been the outcome? And then, once the climate change is raised, you have to relate it to the renewable sources of energy development in this country. What have been the measures taken in tackling solar, wind, energy, like that? It's very difficult to anticipate the questions, but normally the practice is to first make you feel comfortable once you enter by asking things which you know, then gradually move on to other areas depending on your service preference and whatever you mentioned, that. At the end of the proceedings, you should stand up, but you should not be in a hurry. Don't give a feeling of being relieved of a burden. No. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much, sir. Then when you go, again, don't rush back. Your steps should be firm and well organized. In a normal manner, you should go. These are the things which should be in mind. You see, there is an element of luck in life. One cannot kind of project success in every endeavor. But important thing is to make a determined effort and have faith in God. Because you have responded to the command of God to take part in this examination. A very steep examination. So once you have responded to the command, rest is in God's hands. I'm quite fond of quoting Sri Aurobindo. He obtained 11th rank in the Indian Civil Service examination in the year 1889. So in one of his most inspiring poems, he wrote, and I quote, sorry, it is in slightly Latinized English. So I quote, when thou hast the command, care only to fulfill it. Rest is God's will and blessings, which men called luck, chance, or fortune, unquote. So once you have responded to the call of God, the rest is His, but you make your efforts. Fine, ladies and gentlemen, I had great pleasure in talking to you, and I wish you all the very best in your endeavors. And if this session helps you in some way to do well in the interview, I will consider my efforts amply, adequately, and fully rewarded. Thank you.